A story you'll definitely want to hear to the end. Chapter 1, Overture in Broken Glass. It's time to end this show. He dropped the ring onto my plate with such cold confidence, as if all of this wasn't our life, but a failed play. I raised my eyes, refusing to let the tears win, nodded, and slowly stood up. The waiter, frozen nearby with a frightened look on his face, resembled a set piece forgotten on stage by a clumsy stagehand. The restaurant, our beloved little world with its dim lighting and the smell of wax, suddenly became alien, hostile. The white tablecloth seemed like a shroud, and the ring, sinking into the wild berry sauce, was a cheap glass prop, a piece of evidence in a poorly staged play about betrayal. Arthur always loved grand gestures. His life was a series of calculated entrances, pauses, and monologues. Even now, destroying what we had built for 7 years, he couldn't deny himself the pleasure of being the director. I straightened my silk dress, feeling the stares from the neighboring tables, a mixture of curiosity and schadenfreude. Poor thing. Dumped right in the middle of dinner. They saw only what they were allowed to see, a scorned woman and a cruel man. They didn't know that beneath the icy calm in my veins, it wasn't anger or despair that simmered, but pure, unadulterated fear. Not the fear of loneliness. Oh, no. It was the primal terror of a cornered animal that understands the hunter is on its trail. Arthur, my beautiful, my talented Arthur, had decided to end the show. But he had no idea who had actually written the script. I stepped outside. The night air, damp and cool, hit my face but brought no relief. The city hummed, blinded with neon, living its own separate, noisy life, indifferent to my little tragedy. Was it a tragedy? I took a slender cigarette from my purse, lit it, and the bitter smoke filled my lungs. I watched the passing cars, the hurrying pedestrians, and saw only one thing in their faces: naivety. They were all playing their parts, unaware that their world, their rules, their morality was as fragile a set as the walls of the expensive restaurant behind me. They believed in love, in loyalty, in justice. I once believed too, until the day I understood that the world is not a stage for noble dramas, but a fighting pit where the survivor is not the one who is right, but the one who is more cunning and ruthless. Arthur was my greatest role, my masterpiece. I had sculpted him from the pliable material of youthful ambition and self-doubt. I was his muse, his support, his safe harbor. I created a perfect world for him, a perfect home, a perfect life. I was Pygmalion, and he was my Galatea. But it seemed my sculpture had decided it had a will of its own. In the show, I repeated his words to myself, and the corner of my mouth twitched into a smirk. Poor naive boy, he thinks he's the one bringing down the curtain. The phone in my purse vibrated. I didn't look at the screen. I knew who it was. It wasn't Arthur with a belated apology or pathetic excuses. It was the past, the very past that Arthur and I, so I had thought, had buried so securely under the foundation of our sparkling happiness. 5 years of silence. For 5 years, I had convinced myself it was all over, that the ghost of that night would never return. But ghosts don't die. They wait patiently for the living to make a mistake, and Arthur had just made one. His theatrical gesture with the ring wasn't just the end of our marriage, it was the starting pistol, a signal to all the demons hiding in the shadows that the game was beginning again. I threw the cigarette away and walked slowly down the street, dissolving into the crowd. Let Arthur sit in the restaurant, reveling in his melodrama. Let him feel like a victor who has thrown off his shackles. A cruel hangover awaited him. He thinks he's burned his bridges, but in reality, he's just set our house on fire, not knowing I locked all the doors from the inside and hid the key. He doesn't understand that you can't just walk away from a play if your role is not the hero, but the victim. Yes, it was time to end the show, but the finale would be nothing like he imagined. The finale would be mine, and there would be no applause. There would only be silence, a deafening, dead silence. I would walk to our home, to that perfect, deceitful nest, and I would wait. I had to prepare, because when the curtain rises for the final act, there should be nothing superfluous on stage, especially not witnesses. Chapter 2: A House Built on Bones. Our home greeted me with a sterile silence. I myself had designed this interior, selecting each item with manic precision. White walls, minimalist light wood furniture, panoramic windows overlooking a manicured garden. All of it was meant to scream of purity, lightness, success. A lie. This house was not a fortress, but a mausoleum. Its foundation was poured not with concrete, but with silence, and a mute scream was forever frozen in the whiteness of the walls. Every vase, every painting, every designer lamp was but to drown out the echo of what we had done. For 7 years, Arthur and I had lived here like ghosts, playing the happy family for glossy magazines, while the truth slowly decomposed beneath the floorboards. I walked into Arthur's study, the holy of holies, where he prepared for his roles, where his awards lined the shelves. They were all mine. Not in the vulgar sense that I inspired him. No, I cleared his path. I was not his muse, but the power behind the throne of his career. His main rival, the brilliant and unstable Julian, had disappeared 5 years ago, simply vanished after one of the loud theater parties. The police were stumped. The press was rife with speculation, from suicide to escaping to a Buddhist monastery. There were many theories, but only 2 people knew the truth, or rather 3. And the third, I now understood, had decided he was done with silence. I approached the massive oak desk. My fingers confidently found the hidden button under the tabletop. A soft click sounded, and one of the panels in the wall, disguised as a bookshelf, slid aside, revealing a small safe. Arthur didn't know about this hiding place. It was my personal sanctuary, my archive of sins. I entered the code, the date of Julian's disappearance. The door opened. Inside lay only one thing, a thin leather folder. I took it out, and the cold of memories burned my fingers. Inside wasn't money or documents. There were photographs. Amateur shots taken that night at the country lake. Here was Julian laughing, too drunk, too handsome. Here was Arthur, pale, clenching his fists in the background. And here was I, smiling at Julian, pouring something other than wine into his glass. And the last shot, blurry, taken in near complete darkness, 2 figures at the water's edge, and a dark, still body on the sand. The phone in my purse vibrated again, insistently, demandingly. I knew I couldn't put it off any longer. My hand trembled as I took it out. It wasn't the past, it was the present coming for me. I pressed the answer button, and a voice, distorted by an electronic modulator, hit my ears. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. "The performance is over, Alina," the voice rasped. "Did you think I'd forgotten? Did you think I'd forgive? You have 24 hours to get 500,000. Otherwise, these lovely photos will end up with the right people. And your precious Arthur will find out who was really conducting the orchestra that night." The voice went silent, leaving only static on the line. I stood frozen, staring at the photographs. The voice had lied about one thing. Arthur knew everything. He was there. He saw it. He just chose to forget. But now he would have to remember, because the curtain was indeed rising for the final act. And I knew the spotlight wouldn't just be on me, it would blind us both. Chapter 3. Confession of a Marionette. Arthur stumbled into the house an hour later, not a triumphant victor, not the director of his own destiny, but a beaten dog. His expensive coat was unbuttoned, his face was paler than chalk, and not a trace of his former cold confidence remained. He saw me standing in his study with the folder in my hands, and a primal terror flashed in his eyes. He understood everything. He knew this wasn't just a domestic quarrel. This was a sentence. "Did they call?" His voice was hoarse, broken. It wasn't a question, but a statement. "Yes," I answered calmly, placing the folder on the desk. "They want money. A lot of money." He collapsed into the armchair, covering his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. "I can't do this anymore, Lena. I can't." His voice broke. "I thought if I left, if I broke up with you, this filth would stop sticking to me. I thought I could breathe."
So that was it. His pathetic performance in the restaurant wasn't an act of cruelty, but a cowardly attempt to flee. He wasn't leaving me. He was trying to amputate a gangrenous limb, naively believing it would save his life. Such predictable human stupidity. "You can't run from this, Arthur," I said, my voice even, almost motherly. "We're in this together since that very night." I walked over and perched on the edge of the desk, looking down at him, at my broken, terrified God whom I myself had created. "Remember, Arthur, remember everything. You wanted that role, the role that made you a star, but Julian was supposed to get it. He was more talented, more brilliant. Everyone knew it. You were howling with envy and helplessness. You said you'd do anything to make him disappear." "I was drunk. I didn't mean it," he shouted, throwing his head back. His eyes were full of tears. "But I did," I cut in. "I always take your wishes literally. I arranged that party at the lake. I invited Julian. I kept pouring filth into his wine until he couldn't stand on his feet. And then I asked him to take a walk by the water. You followed us. You saw everything." The memories flooded back, and now I was speaking not just for him, but for myself, exorcising the demons. He was vile. He started getting handsy, saying nasty things about you, about me. He said you were a talentless hack who was only successful because of me. And then I hit him with a rock. Once, then again. And you just stood there and watched. You watched as I dragged his body to the boat. You watched as I tied a weight to his legs. You were silent when I came back, covered in blood and muck. You hugged me and said that everything would be all right now, that now we were free. He sobbed, his whole body shaking. I didn't want to. I didn't want to.
But you got what you wanted, I finished, standing up. My voice rang with steel. You got his role. You got the fame. You got everything. The price was paid. And now they've brought us the bill. $500,000 by tomorrow evening. I turned and walked out of the study, leaving him alone with the truth he had so desperately tried to bury within himself. I felt no pity, no fear, only a cold, ringing clarity. A plan was already forming in my mind. The show must go on, but the roles would have to be recast. Chapter 4. Rehearsal for the finale. Morning brought not dawn, but a gray, oppressive gloom that seemed to seep through the glass and fill the house. Arthur hadn't slept. He sat in the living room, haggard, aged by 10 years, staring at a single point. He had become his own shadow, a pathetic parody of the brilliant actor whose face graced magazine covers. He was broken, and in this state, he was useless to me. I needed an executor, not a repentant sinner. "We need to get the money," I said, entering the room with 2 cups of coffee. My voice was businesslike and calm. I was deliberately playing the role of a crisis manager, the strong woman taking control of the situation. It was the role he was used to, the one that allowed him to remain weak. He looked up at me with empty eyes. "I don't have that kind of money. All our main assets, they're joint. Any large transaction will raise questions." "I've taken care of it," I said, placing the coffee on the table. "I have my own account, the one you don't know about, for a rainy day. It seems that day has come." I was lying. The money existed, but not in an account. It was cash, hidden in a safe deposit box, a portion of Arthur's fees that I had hidden from him and the tax authorities for years. I always prepared for war. His face brightened slightly. A glimmer of hope appeared, a foolish, naive hope that you could simply buy your way out of horror. "We'll pay, and it will all be over?"
Yes, darling, we'll pay, and it will all be over. I lied again, looking him straight in the eye. I sat down next to him and even allowed myself to take his hand. His palm was cold and damp. "But you will deliver the money, alone." He flinched and pulled back. "But why me? I can't." "You can," my tone hardened. "You must. They know you, your face. If I go, they might suspect something, get scared. You are the guarantee. You're an actor, Arthur. Play your last, most important role. The role of a man who has come to pay for his silence, confidently, calmly, as if you do this every day. You'll hand over the bag and walk away, and we will forget this ever happened." I could see the struggle in his mind between fear and the last drop of vanity. "Play a role," he whispered. It was the only concept he could still grasp. Not reality, not crime, not retribution. A role. Exactly. I stood up. "I'll go get the money, and you prepare. Rehearse. Tomorrow evening. They'll give us the location an hour before the meeting." As I drove to the bank, my plan was honed to perfection. Every detail fell into place. The money was just bait. The real game would not unfold at the moment of the exchange. It had already begun. I took out a second phone,
A burner, bought many years ago and kept for a special occasion. I found the only number in the contacts, labeled simply consultant. He was a former police officer whom I had once pulled out of major trouble, and he was indebted to me. I hadn't called him in 5 years. I stopped the car in a deserted alley and typed a message. Hello. Need advice on an old case. The disappearance of the actor Julian Werner. Anonymous information has surfaced. Very hot. Off the record. The reply came in 5 minutes. I'm listening. I smiled. The curtain was raised. The actors were in makeup. The prop, the bag of money, was almost ready. All that was left was to arrange the lighting so that it would snatch only one culprit from the darkness, the one whom I myself would cast in that role, my beautiful, talented, weak creation.
Chapter 5. Applause in the silence. The day dragged on like a bad dream. Arthur paced the house rehearsing. He muttered phrases into the void that he thought a man in his position should say. He tried to find the right walk, the right facial expression. It would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. He was preparing for a performance, not knowing that I had already sold all the tickets and changed the name of the play from Redemption to Scapegoat. The message from the blackmailer arrived at 8 o'clock sharp. The old brick factory by the river, in an hour. No police, no tricks. I silently showed the phone to Arthur. Then I handed him the heavy sports bag stuffed with bundles of cash. Here, remember what I said, calm and confident. Hand it over and leave. He nodded, mechanically taking the bag. His eyes were vacant. He no longer belonged to himself. He was my marionette, ready to step onto the stage for a final bow. I watched him get into the car and drive off into the thickening dusk. I felt nothing. No fear for him, not a drop of regret, only the icy calm of a surgeon completing a complex operation. As soon as his car disappeared around the corner, I picked up my burner phone. My fingers quickly typed a new message for the consultant. Information confirmed. The blackmailer has set up a meeting. The subject is Arthur Crane. He's bringing the ransom, $500,000, right now. The old brick factory by the river. He was Julian's lover. Killed him out of jealousy. Tonight, he's trying to pay for a witness's silence. Be careful, he may be armed. I added the last sentence for dramatic effect. A lie layered on a lie creates the most convincing truth. After sending the message, I tossed the phone into the fireplace where logs were already crackling. The plastic hissed, melting and disappearing forever, along with my last connection to this affair. And then my main phone, lying on the table, chimed softly. A message. From an unknown number. I frowned. The blackmailer shouldn't have been writing anymore. I opened it. There were only a few words.
Got the money. Your husband is a pathetic coward. You were always the smart one, Elena. I knew you wouldn't fail. By the way, the police are already here. Good show. Catherine. Catherine, Julian's sister, the quiet, inconspicuous photographer who always stayed in the shadows at every party, the one who took those amateur shots at the lake. She had been playing her own game all along. She didn't just want money, she wanted revenge, and she had just gotten both, making me her unwitting weapon against my own husband. I slowly sank into the armchair. In the distance, I could hear the faint wail of sirens. It grew louder, closer. They were coming for Arthur. For my Galatea. I stared into the fire at the spot where the phone had just vanished. Catherine had miscalculated in only one respect. She thought that by exposing me to myself, she would win. But she didn't understand. I didn't care who was pulling the strings. Arthur was my main problem, my eternal threat. His weakness could have destroyed me at any moment. I would have gotten rid of him anyway. Catherine simply did some of the dirty work for me. The show was truly over. Arthur would be caught with the money at the scene of the alleged crime. His motive, jealousy and fear, was served on a silver platter. His attempt to dump me would be seen by the investigation as an attempt to cover his tracks. It was all perfect. The sirens were wailing right outside now. I stood up, walked to the bar, and poured myself a glass of expensive whiskey. I raised it, looking at my reflection in the dark window. The stage was empty. The lights were out. Silence had fallen over the audience. And in that deafening silence, I alone applauded my triumph. The finale had exceeded all my expectations. If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and you will hear even more exciting stories.